Our public forum tonight, 7 p.m. Thursday, November 10th, discussing school start times project. And I'd like to begin by rising and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I will get us started. Welcome everyone, virtual and in the room, to our public input session on the School Start Times project. I'm Jen Gold, able to tell. We will just spend a couple real quick minutes at the beginning of this meeting, just giving some context for this project. And then this meeting is really all about community input, not us talking at you or to you, but really hearing what the community feels about this topic. And so, Steve, if you wouldn't mind starting the slides. And go to the next slide, please. I just want to spend a minute giving everybody some context. So this is a project where we as a school committee have been looking into, that is such tiny font, my slide, my bad. Looking into potentially changing some of our, given the immense amount of research that we've seen over the past few years and even longer about how adolescents really need more sleep. And across the country, there's this sort of epidemic of adolescents not getting enough sleep, often because middle school and high school start very early. And so we looked at the data and we saw that, state of Massachusetts has the earliest start times, I believe either the earliest or the second earliest start times of any state in America. And Littleton has, even within that, very, very early, unusually early school start times for high school and middle school. So we thought, all right, let's look into this. Maybe there's things we can do to work on this issue and changes we could make. So back in June, we formed a working group. Beetle and I decided to form a subcommittee within the school committee, and we formed a working group comprised of parents, teachers, the athletic director, Dr. Clenchy, Steve here, and others that are, and students as well, to make sure that we got a very well-rounded amount of input from all perspectives in town on this important issue. We met, we had a kickoff, we gathered all sorts of different perspectives and ideas, and then we had discussions with other relevant people outside of the working group to make sure we were getting all the inputs that we needed. We met again about a month later in summer to really understand all the different parameters and criteria that we had to work within to make these decisions. We ended up hiring a consulting company because it's actually a really complex problem to try to solve. This consulting company has experience actually helping Acton Boxborough solve this problem about 5 or 6 years ago. And they do things like route mapping and understanding efficiencies around town, population density studies, et cetera. So we hired GPI Consulting to help us with this. They worked on this project in September, and then they delivered results to us in October along with some recommendations. We took those recommendations, we put them into the community survey, which we sent out a few weeks ago. Thank you to everybody who responded. We had a really good response rate. We were very, very excited about the amount of community interest and response to the survey. We crunched the numbers. We're still working on all that. And now we're having this community input forum because this is the most important part of it. We want to hear what people have to say. So we'll take all of this input from the survey from tonight, and we'll be presenting this to the full school committee next Thursday at our regularly scheduled meeting. Give them a couple weeks to digest all that, and then hopefully in the following meeting in early December, we will put this to a vote. So in a nutshell, that is the context and the background for this project. And you can walk through the options.
Yeah, so these are the 5 options after meeting with our subcommittee and hearing the criteria of things that would be really, really challenging if we switch to and things that would work within. And when we worked with the consulting company, they had actually come up with 19 scenarios. So we got this comment and question a lot in the survey is, why were these the only 5? Why wasn't this thought of? Why wasn't this thought of? There were actually, I think there were even more than 19 that were thought of, that, but we narrowed it down to the ones that would be feasible based on the criteria from the parents, the athletic director, Dr. Clenchy, the principals. We had already established that. And so these were the 5 that were the most feasible given those different schedules and budgets and things that we had heard from the group. So please know that we explored many more than these options. And these were the 5 we put to the community. One of them is to keep the current schedule, which is option 5. The first and second are essentially the same, but we just switch Shaker Lane and Russell Street, and starting with one of those schools, and then the middle school, high school in the middle, starting later around 8:20, and then either Shaker Lane or Russell Street, then taking the third. Option 3 is essentially our current schedule, but shifting all the schools by about 30 minutes, 35 minutes. And then there's a glare. The last one.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Option 3 also flips Shaker Lane and Russell Street.
Oh, yes, sorry. Option 3 flips Shaker Lane and Russell Street. We had heard some feedback about Shaker Lane students getting very tired towards later in the afternoon. And so we took that into consideration in that option. And then option 4 is the one that we have a 3-tier system right now. So the bus comes 3 times. And option 4 is the one that condenses it into 2 tiers. And we did put notes, Shaker Lane and high school would not ride on the same bus together. There would be a different set of buses doing Shaker Lane, a different set doing high school, and then the middle school, Russell Street together. And then option 5. So tonight, we'd really just love to hear from you all, people, everyone that's in person, everyone that's on Zoom. If you could start by saying your name, whether you're a parent, staff, or student, if there are students, and also which school you're affiliated with. So it helps us keep track of the data.
So we'd like to take any public input. We have a handful of people here in person and online, and feel free to step up to the mic or raise your hand.
Yes, Kristen McManus from 3 Harvest Lane. I'm a parent of a student at the Littleton Middle School and then at Russell Street School. So I decided to come here to speak on behalf of my husband and I because we're both working parents. And I think it's really important to note that, I don't have numbers in front of me, but that there are many working parents that some of these options would just really not work for, whether it's additional childcare that we would need to do in the afternoons or the mornings. And it can be really difficult because, as it is, we have lots of parents that, might be working from home at the moment, but I know personally, my husband drops off my daughter at Russell Street and then heads right to the train to be able to get there in time. And at that, he's even getting into Boston 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. And this isn't just really feasible for us going forward. And so we've had to do an additional cost of Tiger's Den. And luckily they had openings, but Tiger's Den is sort of at their max at the moment, as I think we all know. And so this is going to impact, I think, a lot of parents who are working, who are able to manage currently, but that won't be able to manage perhaps if this were to change, particularly for the later start times. I'm also speaking as a teacher in another school district. I teach high school history, and I teach in a school which has gone to later start times in the last 2 years. And I'll tell you anecdotally, as a teacher, I have seen no difference in my students. They still come to school exhausted. They still have terrible attendance. They're still tardy. And I think that although start times perhaps do help them get that extra time in the morning, I think what really, you have to look at a larger societal problem, which is that students are still staying up and binge watching Netflix until 2 o'clock in the morning. They're still on their screens, they're still doing other things. And so I think that this is a Band-Aid, but that it's not going to fix the problem that we're potentially looking to fix. And so I just would like you to take that into consideration. I'm vehemently opposed to changing this, particularly the really late start times, because I think of my middle school student who's currently in the play. And right now she already gets out at 4:30 from play practice and then has to come home and do homework and then dance and all the other things that kids do. And so if they're not getting out in the middle school, for example, until 3:20 or perhaps later, that's going to push our day all the way even further. And that's going to put more stress on at home. And I think, I don't believe I'd be alone perhaps in having that thought. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Anybody else in the room want to approach?
Hi, I'm TJ Donegan. I live at 31 Florence Street. The only thing I really wanted to address, well, 2 things. One, I'm glad that you're taking an evidence-based approach. That's really, I think, the way to approach it. There's obviously a lot of options on the table. There's a million ways you can do this. There's also a mountain of evidence that adolescents do benefit in aggregate over start time. Obviously, some kids, they're still going to stay up, but I think it is a good change. My main concern is, as a parent of a child with Shaker Lane and another younger one who's going to be there soon, that like option 1, especially if they start at 7:45, Like my daughter, we live about as close as you can live to the school without walking, and she still has to be on the bus a half hour before school starts. So if she's on the bus at 7:15, she's up at 6:15, and getting a 5 and 6-year-old up at 6:15 is not very likely for a lot of families. And then similar on the other end, working parents, you know, if they're getting out at 2, if I'm dropping her off and then going into even Cambridge or somewhere not quite as far as Boston, I'm basically just turning around, coming right home, and I have to leave at lunchtime, which is, you know, for most jobs, is completely not feasible. So, you know, obviously you're going to have to sort of make sacrifices somewhere along the line, but I think especially for the elementary school students and Shaker in particular, the 7:45 start time feels just like it's going to cause more problems than it solves. But, you know, as far as the later start times for adolescents, obviously the evidence is there. But I think for the elementary school students, I know there was an original report, you know, another school system did this and it didn't cause a problem. I think there's just not enough evidence that pre-8 a.m. elementary school times, there's not enough evidence to know one way or the other if it has a negative impact. A couple school systems going through it and not seeing a major impact, I don't think it is compares to all the evidence we have that these kids all need more sleep, and that has a benefit in the long run. So that's it. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's great.
We do have a raised hand.
Go for it.
Can you grab that? I can do it.
Hi, this is Sarah Buckholtz on Sarah Doublet Road. I'm just wondering, I'm hearing some really good questions about, or points about evidence. And I'm just wondering, like, how would we know that we've accomplished the goal, you know, meeting kids where they, you know, where they are developmentally, adolescents, like how would we measure success with, you know, this project? And I would imagine that it would need to be, you know, some short-term and long-term data points. So that may be a question for later, but I am interested in more details about how to measure like a successful project.
Any thoughts on it?
No, I was gonna ask Sarah if you're a parent or staff, if you don't mind saying.
No, I don't mind at all. No, I'm a parent. I have twins at Shaker Lane.
Well, I don't know that we know the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious, I mean, the ways that I can, you know, imagine would be, you know, test scores and performance metrics overall that we use to measure performance, you know, test scores and student, you know, mental health metrics. But I don't know that there are a mountain of, you know, performance indicators we can use to measure retroactively whether this works. I think we have to, in this case, take it on the evidence that we see across the country, you know, schools doing this, and the fact that there is a major trend towards shifting start times later for adolescent schools, and believe in the scientific studies that we've read and the mountain of evidence that we've seen, that this is good for developing minds in adolescents, and kind of go with that rather than using a major like retroactive data-based approach to measure success. That's my thinking on it. Thank you, Sarah.
Talia, get your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hello.
Oh. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Payal, and I have one son in junior high and one in Russell Street. And the main reason we are thinking that, this is my perception, that main reason we are thinking that because of lack of sleep, right? So if normally, like not only for like, you know, teenager kids, even for younger kids or people of our age, everybody should be like at least getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep. So instead of kids staying up till 11 or 12, they can start sleeping early, 9 or 10, and they can get enough sleep. So I don't think that waking up early, like you, or starting like a late school can be a reason, like, they will not have a lack of sleep. Probably they might say, oh, we don't have school that early, so we can stay little up. And certain data says that, like, in fact, like if you have to do meditation, yoga, so early morning time is the best time. So again, this is my perception that thinking that help, like, moving even like, 1 hour or 2 hour, if we say, so that is like, not, kids will not have a lack of sleep. So it's better like time management. And if I think for my son that if he's in junior high, so he should be getting like, preparing for like, real life experience. After 2 years, he will be in college. After that, he will have to do job. So multitasking and time management. So it will be better at this age. He gets like, practice. He puts these habits in a practice that, okay, getting up early and doing certain, like, managing certain way will help me in a long run. So if we are thinking of lack of sleep and that many other things, so I don't think it relates to like, school starting time late. It will like help anyway. I don't see the connection. As long as you take like, 8 to 10 hours sleep. So that's better. Like kids have to manage the time. They start sleeping early. And like, in the long run, I think like, this will be helpful in the, like, when they are in college or when they start working and they have to do multitasking. So I am in favor of keeping the same time what we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Pyle.
Thank you, Pyle.
And please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Ann Spiegel, 106 Goldsmith, a future parent. Next year I'll have a kindergartner in the school and then another one coming up, but I also teach in a surrounding district. I guess my comments or, opinions is the option 3 and option 4 seem to meet people in the middle the most, which I appreciate. I do worry about I've already seen in the moms group about the after school care is already at max capacity, like the first person had stated. So that does worry me a little bit as we shift any, Shaker Lane middle school type options when they're not able to kind of take care of themselves until a parent comes home. And I also worry in general about the younger grades, as the gentleman stated, of getting up that much earlier for the younger kiddos. I understand the arguments. I see the science on the teacher side of things. Our district has not decided to change. We've had a lot of debates about it because we haven't seen Acton and Sudbury have much success with it. So I guess I would hope that we'll meet in the middle and have more conversations about this and more benchmarks before a bigger decision is made, and make sure that there's at least appropriate care for students in place for working parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
State your name, your street, and your question, please.
Chandresh Kovani, 4 Orwell Lane. And I'm here on behalf of my wife and myself, and we have 2 kids. My little one goes to Shaker Lane. Older one used to go to middle school, but not any longer. And one of the primary reason is the so early start time. Right? I mean, we were very concerned about it, and that's one of the reason. And I'm glad that that the town is finally taking this initiative and taking input from everybody. I mean, there are study after studies that proves that kids need, especially the middle school and the high school kids, they need more sleep. And starting late school is a no-brainer in my opinion. I understand that that's going to cause a lot of problem for many parents. So, what I would suggest is like if there is an option to like kind of offering extra capacity in Tiger Den to support the parents who have that problem, because we should definitely address the parents' concern, but at the same time, the decision should be focused on the kids, not on the parents, right? that's the main reason that schools are for the kids. So that's my personal opinion, but at the same time, I'm appreciative of like the others' concern, and we should address them as well. And maybe if there is a ground in the middle, that's like, option 3 or 4, that makes sense too. Like whatever we can do to extend the start time for the, especially for the high school and the middle school, that would be like, our preference 1 and 2. But if not, then at least if we meet in the middle, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Kathleen Cole, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hi there, this is Kathleen Kroll. I am a parent of a child at Shaker Lane and at Russell Street. So I really think that if I agree can you hear me?
Yes, can I have your address, please?
Oh, sure, it's 8 Spruce Street. So as I was saying, I feel like all of these options here are robbing Peter to pay Paul. So we all agree that the high school kids and the middle kids need more sleep than they're getting now, but also the younger kids need more sleep than the older kids. So you're looking at kids who in Shaker Lane, they start at age 5. Those kids need up to 13 hours a night. And you're talking about families, working families. So yes, it's not about the parents, it's about the kids. It's about those kids getting the emotional support they need from their families. So when a working parent has to pick up their kid from Shaker Lane, if they have room, at 5:30, 6 p.m., and that kid needs 12 to 13 hours of sleep, how much time do they get to spend with their parents that night? They go home, they have to shove dinner down their throats and put them in bed. It's just not a working solution for families, honestly. Where right now, what we need to look at is ways to not rob Peter to pay Paul, but ways to get these older kids what they need. So if you look at option 4, why do we have option 4 with Shaker Lane having their own bus and the high school having their own bus? Why not combine the middle school and the high school onto a bus, leave Shaker Lane and Russell Street alone? They're not a problem. Stop changing the problem to shifted the problem to somebody else. Instead, make the solutions towards what the problem is. Put those kids on a bus, change their time to whatever you want to change their time to, because you have to pay for the extra bus anyway. And that's it. It's the problem solved. Anyway, that's how I feel about it. I agree there's a problem. I just don't think that the solution should be to give other parents and other kids a problem. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
And
Sorry, apologies. I forgot to ask this one last question. Do we know how the staff and administration feels? Like, have they done this survey and what were their results?
They have, the survey went to parents, staff, and students, and we're going through that data now. We'll present to the school committee next Thursday at the meeting.
Okay, great. I'll tune in. Thank you.
Sharon Martins, Foster Street. I have a question about option 4. On the sheet, it said that the bus fees would double with that option. So would that be that it would go to $500 per child?
I think we said could potentially, and we're just trying to gauge what appetite would be if there weren't other ways to cover bus fees. And that was one of the ways that it needed to be covered with additional bus fees. What would the response be from the community? That's not like a set number. We still have to figure out how much it would cost, how much could be covered by the town and the budget. Perhaps there would be an increase to bus fees. And so we just wanted to understand what impact that would have.
I think that's something that really needs to be considered because that's a significant amount of money for the buses. So I just think that putting option 4 as just like any other option, I just think we have to be a little careful with the money.
Absolutely.
Consider that.
Option 4 would be all about money. Thank you.
I would say no more questions.
Okay. I mean, if we are done, we can close out. There's Karen. Yeah, give them a minute.
Karen Morrison.
Hi.
Your street, please, any question?
Sure. Karen Morrison, 11 Spruce Street. So first, I just wanted to thank you all for shepherding this process. I really appreciate the initiative here. I think that it's a problem that needs to be addressed and not studied further. I think I would urge everyone to consider, not letting best get in the way of better. I'm the parent of an RSS student and an LMS student, and I have a student at Parker, and their day starts at 8:30. And there's just a couple points I wanted to raise. One is that it's, we all know there seems to be a general acceptance from the committee and from the folks that we've heard from so far that older children have a different sleep schedule biologically than younger children. But I think we need to keep in mind that that doesn't just mean that older children tend to stay up later and wake up later. It's that younger children tend to wake up earlier. And so I think that we should respect that as much as we are respecting the fact that older children tend to sleep later. And to me, I think option 4 addresses problems that none of the other options address, and those are problems that are inherent in a 3-tier bus schedule. I don't think we're ever going to get away from those problems unless we address a 3-tier bus schedule. 3 tiers is always going to start at least one school really early. And from what I've heard so far, too early for a lot of folks. And it's going to put one group of children out on the streets catching the bus in the dark. I think that having a 2-tier system makes the most sense in terms of safety. And I think it also addresses a problem that I haven't heard discussed yet, which is the problem of the 3-tier bus schedule for parents of multiple children. When you've got one child that starts school at 7 a.m. or in the 7 o'clock hour, and another one that starts in the 9 o'clock hour, and maybe one in the middle that starts in the 8 o'clock hour, you've got a real problem for working parents. And then if I had one kid in Shaker Lane, another one in the middle school at one point, and my middle schooler on early release days was getting home about 2.5 hours, 3 hours later than my youngest had left for school. And nothing addresses that. None of the other options address that other than the 2-tier system. And so to me, that's a clear favorite. It offers benefits and addresses issues that none of the other options address. So again, thanks very much for working on this, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Karen.
Wait.
I will just say, not to close it out yet, but that as Beanle mentioned, we are in our next school committee meeting a week from today. Was that November 17th? We will almost exclusively be tackling this subject. Beanle and I will be sharing the results of the community survey in great detail, cutting it by parents, by staff, by students, by school, and going through, all the pros and cons of these options. Obviously, Justin, Brad, and Stacy, and Dr. Clinchy will be, very involved in helping us figure out, asking many questions, understanding are there other options we haven't uncovered. So for those that are interested in this topic and a lot of what's come up tonight will be addressed and will be really unpacked at that meeting, please do tune in because it'll be basically all on that topic. So
We do still have time if anybody at home wants to say a comment or ask a question.
guess we're good.
I think so.
Thank you all. We really appreciate the huge community interest in this topic. It's obviously so important and very, meaningful to a lot of people's day-to-day lives and to our kids' health. So thank you for all the survey feedback, your feedback tonight, those who showed up and dialed in. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for all your residents and that.